I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
For almost 2,000 years, we've believed we knew what Jesus looked like. Every painting, every movie, every church window has shown us the same gentle face with flowing hair and kind eyes. But what if everything we thought we knew was completely wrong? A shocking discovery has just surfaced that could change Christianity forever, and even Joe Rogan is talking about it. This is something that could rewrite history itself. What was found in this ancient letter will leave you questioning everything you believed about the most famous person who ever lived. But before we dive into this earth-shattering discovery, let's first understand where this incredible find came from. The discovery that shook Rome. Deep beneath the dusty shelves of an ancient monastery library outside Rome, something incredible was waiting to be found. The building had stood for over 1,000 years, holding secrets that scholars could only dream about. Workers were busy scanning old books and papers into computers when they stumbled upon something that would change everything. Hidden inside a forgotten wooden chest wrapped in cloth that was falling apart lay a piece of ancient paper. The writing was so faded you could barely see it. But it was still there after all these centuries. When experts first looked at it, they couldn't believe their eyes. This was something that had been talked about in whispers for hundreds of years. The paper was covered in old Latin writing, the kind that Roman officials used long ago. But what made everyone's hearts race was what the letter was supposed to be. Scholars had heard stories about this document for centuries, but most thought it was fake or just a legend. They called it the Letter of Lentulus, and it claimed to be written by a Roman official who actually saw Jesus Christ in person. For years, experts had argued about whether this letter was real or not. Most said it was probably written much later by someone pretending to be from Jesus's time. But then something amazing happened that changed everything. Scientists at one of the world's best universities ran special tests on the ancient paper. These tests can tell exactly how old something is by looking at tiny particles that break down over time. When the results came back, the room went completely silent. The paper was from the 1st century, the exact time when Jesus was alive. News about this discovery spread like wildfire, reaching everyone from history professors to regular people scrolling through social media. But one voice that really caught people's attention was Joe Rogan himself. During one of his podcast episodes, he brought up this incredible find and didn't hold back his thoughts. Rogan talked about how wild it was that this letter might actually be real. He mentioned how people are quick to doubt stories about Jesus coming back from the dead, but then get excited about other historical discoveries. His comments got millions of people talking about something they might never have heard of otherwise. The podcast host's reaction showed just how big this discovery really was. When someone as curious and skeptical as Joe Rogan starts talking about an ancient document, you know, it's hit the mainstream in a major way. He questioned how this might completely change what we think we know about one of history's most important figures. His discussion opened the floodgates for people everywhere to start asking the same questions. Was this letter really written by someone who saw Jesus? And if it was real, what did it mean for everything we believed about Christianity? But to understand why this letter matters so much, we need to know who wrote it and why. The mystery man behind the letter. The name on this ancient document was Publius Lentulus. And figuring out who he was became like solving a 2,000-year-old puzzle. According to the letter, Lentulus was a Roman official working in the area where Jesus lived and taught. If this was true, it would make him one of the most important witnesses in human history. Roman records from that time are pretty spotty. So, finding information about Lentulus wasn't easy. Some historians think he might have been a governor or some other high-ranking official sent by the Roman Empire to keep an eye on things in a very troubled part of their territory. This was during one of the most dangerous times in that region's history, with religious tensions running high and people talking about revolution. If Lentulus really held an important position, he would have been right in the middle of all the drama. He would have known the Jewish religious leaders, the Roman soldiers, and probably heard all the gossip about this teacher named Jesus who was drawing huge crowds and making powerful people nervous. The letter itself gives us some clues about who Lentulus might have been. The way it's written matches other official Roman documents from that time period. Language experts who study ancient Latin say the words and phrases sound right for someone in the Roman government. It's not the kind of writing you'd expect from a regular person or even a religious scholar. What makes the letter even more interesting is who it was written to. The Roman Senate. This wasn't just a personal note to a friend or family member. Lentulus was reporting to the most powerful group of people in the Roman Empire. This suggests that whatever he had to say about Jesus was considered important enough to reach the very top of the government. The tone of the letter is respectful but careful, like someone who knows they're dealing with something bigger than they expected. Lentulus doesn't write about Jesus like he's just another troublemaker. Instead, he seems impressed and maybe even a little worried about this person's influence and power. For as long as anyone can remember, artists have painted Jesus the same way. Long flowing hair, gentle eyes, a peaceful expression that makes you think of kindness and love. This image is everywhere in churches, movies, books, and even on jewelry. It's so common that most people can't imagine Jesus looking any other way. But Lentulus described something completely different, and it's nothing like what you'd expect. According to his letter, Jesus was unusually tall for his time with a strong, muscular build that suggested years of hard physical work. This wasn't the thin, delicate figure that Renaissance artists love to paint. This was someone who looked like he could handle himself in tough situations. Even more surprising was what Lentulus wrote about Jesus's hair and coloring. Instead of the dark Middle Eastern features that most people expect, the letter described someone with lighter, wavy hair and a beard that was almost blonde. This detail alone has caused heated debates among scholars who study what people looked like in ancient times. But perhaps the most striking part of Lentulus's description was Jesus's eyes. He wrote about intense, piercing blue eyes that could make people feel both inspired and intimidated at the same time. These were the eyes of a leader, someone who commanded attention and respect just by looking at you. The Roman official also mentioned Jesus's strong jawline and determined facial features. Everything about this description painted a picture of someone who was used to being in charge, someone whose very presence demanded that people pay attention. This was a man who looked the part, too. Lentulus wrote about how Jesus carried himself with confidence and strength. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, they listened. And when he looked at someone directly, they felt the full weight of his personality and conviction. But the physical description was just the beginning of what made this Jesus so different from traditional beliefs. The leader behind the legend. The letter also painted a picture of Jesus's personality that was far more complex than most people expected. Lentulus wrote about a man who could be both stern and compassionate. Someone who demanded respect but also showed deep care for others. According to the Roman official, Jesus had a way of speaking that made even educated people stop and listen. He was engaging in serious discussions about justice, power, and how society should work. This Jesus could hold his own in debates with religious scholars and Roman officials alike. The letter suggests that Jesus's influence went far beyond spiritual matters. Lentulus seemed concerned about the political impact this charismatic teacher was having on the region. People were talking about change, about challenging the way things had always been done. What really worried the Roman official was how Jesus could inspire such loyalty and passion in his followers. This was the kind of dedication that could lead to serious political problems. Jesus had a gift for making people believe that a better world was possible and that was dangerous to those in power. Lentulus described Jesus as someone who never backed down from a challenge or compromised his beliefs for the sake of peace. When confronted by religious leaders or government officials, he stood his ground with a confidence that impressed even his enemies. This was a man who believed completely in his mission and wasn't afraid to face the consequences. The letter also mentions Jesus' ability to read people and situations with remarkable accuracy. He seemed to understand political games and social dynamics in a way that made him both an effective leader and a potential threat to the established order. When news about the Letter of Lentulus finally broke, it hit the world like a thunderbolt. Social media exploded with discussions, debates, and arguments about what this could mean for Christianity and history itself. Within hours, hashtags about the discovery were trending globally with millions of people sharing their thoughts and reactions. Religious leaders found themselves in an impossible position. Traditional churches had spent centuries building their teachings around the gentle, humble Jesus that everyone knew and loved. Now they were faced with evidence that suggested a very different kind of person, one who might not fit so neatly into their established doctrines.